Good morning. My name is Dave Crable. I'm with iHemp Michigan. iHemp Michigan's mission is to educate, inform, and promote the research, development, and cultivation of industrial hemp in Michigan. iHemp Michigan advocates for wellness in people and the planet, and it begins with hemp. Today we have some great speakers on our show. We look forward to that. But first, we have a little bit of news from Mike Brennan.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Dave. So I didn't mean to interrupt. My other publication, Michigan Marijuana Report, I wanted to mention, I'm trying not to do political stuff because that's what Blaine does. So one of the things that the MRA announced a few days ago was now that we have licensed to grow in the state more than 500,000 cannabis plants. So it's certainly taking off. Michigan is now, I think, top 3 or so of the producing states, and in May alone, 8,000 pounds were sold in Michigan of cannabis, legal cannabis, and I'm sure that a lot more were sold in the other market as well. And so it's really a lot of dispensaries are open. We have almost 200 licensed cannabis businesses, whatever their business may be, a dispensary or grow facility or processor or whatever. So at least on that side of the hemp field, as it were, things are really taking off right now. And I'll turn it over to Blaine to talk about some of the political stuff that's been going on out there. And there's that new agricultural grant you could talk about that'll help farmers in general, right, Blaine?
Yeah, there's a lot of good news to share today, and I'll try to make it as brief as I can because we've got some great topics to talk about today that everybody needs to be concerned about, so that we keep the hemp industry going forward and people feel comfortable and confident with what they're using for CBD products. First thing I'm going to talk about is the CFAF. That's a USDA program. We thought maybe we'd hear some news last week, and we did on Friday regarding the crops that they've included. And they have included a number of different crops in here, but the unfortunate situation right now is that hemp is not included in that program right now. Now, they are still looking at it, and I do think that we've been able to prove that there's been the reduction in the price. So I do think eventually we're going to have that, but it may be another couple of weeks yet. And also, it looks like that they only made 80% of that program to the farmers up front, and it looks like the other 20% then will now be able to be paid to the farmers, probably sometime in August. We're looking for that. So that's good news for that part of it. Now, 2 other things have come to light this last week. The Michigan Small Business Restart Program is what it's called. And there's 2 things. There is a program for ag workers and ag farmers that will help in their grants. They're not loans. And there's the minimum grant is $10,000. The maximum grant is $50,000 under the ag program. And that's to help cover costs with the COVID. If you have to get equipment, if you've had to revamp things on the farm, if you've had to do additional training for your employees. So it's up to $1,000 per employee, but you have to have a minimum of 10 employees to qualify for that grant. We'll share the information. We'll get the links up on the website for that. That started started yesterday. Greenstone Farm Credit Services is who's administering that program. So if you go to either the Michigan Small Business Restart Program, if you just type that in, or if you go to Greenstone, that'll start the process there. It's an online application, and there'll be some steps you have to do to prove who you are and some other things there for that.
There's $15 million available as well. So
correct. Yep. For that one, there's $15 million. And then the other part of the program is this is for the Business Restart Program, and it's done through the economic developments. There's 13 of them throughout the state, and like the one over here is called Lakeshore Advantage that I'm on the west side of the state. And you'd apply for them. And again, it's the same thing, help covering costs for the COVID. That's a little less. That's $20,000 maximum grant per individual on that. And my particular economic development area has $3.5 million in that money to be able to give out for that. So again, some programs to help get everybody restarted and back on and be able to help cover the cost of the getting the COVID. Now, one of the other things that I want to mention too, I just got off a webinar with the state, is every farmer, every business is supposed to have a written restart program. And so if you haven't done that yet, that needs to be done. I just got off a webinar just a little bit before this, and I'll be developing some help for everybody, but you need to have kind of a whole handbook, just like almost like a food safety plan for actually getting back to work in your farmers, how you're keeping them apart, how you're testing them, what happens if somebody does have, if you have ag housing. So a lot of those little items there that need to be covered. And again, a lot of people are not aware that you had to have that in place, and you do. So we'll be talking about that more on another show. There's also another one for ag entrepreneurs to come up for $50,000 in startup funds. Farm Bureau is an innovation challenge for equipment and let's see. The award for the Farm Bureau Entrepreneur of the Year has increased from $50,000 in 2001 to a total of $145,000 in startup funds to provide, sponsored by Farm Credit. And this is for entrepreneurs that are developing equipment and machinery to help the farming economy. And again, we'll talk more about that on another program as well. And we'll have some links up on the website so that you can go and check these places out. Now, the other thing that came out is there's going to be some data sharing that's going to happen between a bunch of universities and everybody. They're asking farmers to be involved in that. I'm going to cover that more a little bit at the end of the show. I think we'll kind of save that for that. But a big collaborative effort to gather information from hemp growers and to be able to provide that information as everybody shares that as we move forward on that. One of the other reports that came out this last week was from USDA, through FDA, and that was on the adulterate, the testing that they did. And they found that over half of the products isn't really marking up to what it is set on the label. And that's the whole reason that we're having today's show to talk about that. We are ingesting the CBD products in one way or another, either through gummies or through food products or through smokable hemp or through drops that we're taking. And so this is a food product that is going into our body. And just like the farming industry and the food industry, if we don't do something and step up and take care of this and monitor this ourselves, or at least have something in place, it's going to come down heavy-handed from the government, because it is a product that we're putting in our body. It is a food product. So to avoid that and to help kind of get us in a good path where everybody can get that certification, we have the U.S. Hemp Authority seal, and we're going to talk about that with Dr. Marielle in a little bit. But first of all, I'm going to introduce our two first speakers. Dr. Richard McDermott was born in England, received a PhD in medical engineering from the University of Leeds, UK, at age 25, then immigrated to the US in 1975. He acquired his first business in 1981 and subsequently became a serial entrepreneur, operating and owning a total of 35 companies, all held within a group. Dr. McDermott's strategy control over the supply chain and process control to ensure the integrity and traceability of deliverable products became one of the group's core strengths. In 2005, he began using encrypted marking technology for signal part tracking for a group company that was successful. He also impressed by the technology that he acquired at 50% of Signakey LLC in 2010. Today, he has divested everything except for Signakey, which is engaged in tracking counterfeit cigarettes in South Africa, obsolete computer chips around the globe, and hemp in the U.S. And also Terri Miller is on. Terri is from Toledo, Ohio, native who calls Chicago home, a lifelong sales and hospitality professional. She found Signakey, then Infographic, if I'm saying that right, in 2005, and became enamored with the potential of it to keep people safe from counterfeit products. She worked with Signakey to implement projects and benefits the end user, including a registry for people's bicycles and valuables that are all targets of theft, a blood tracking project that will ensure safe blood in India and countries where black market blood traffickers operate, and a cannabis to ensure safe legal products reach consumers and legal cannabis products can be easily distinguished from those coming from the legacy market. She developed an extremely scalable seed to insight tracking program for cannabis and is working currently in hemp to help farmers find hotspots on their fields and to provide a secure chain of custody from the plant sample to the lab and beyond. So Richard and Terri,
Welcome.
gonna let you guys speak on and talk a little bit about how you do what you do and why you do.
All righty, let me just start off here to share screen. And I'll find it.
You want to share something on your screen?
Yeah, I'm trying to. Hold on, I had it a second ago. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, at the bottom of the screen is the share screen button.
Yeah, I've got that, the
Okay.
share screen. And I had the slideshow and it disappeared on me. Okay, hold on.
There we go.
There we go.
There we go. All right, now, new for
Then
the
hit
slideshow.
slideshow at the top.
From the beginning. There we go. That's it. Okay. First off, it's Signakey, not Signakey. Signakey. And we've developed a Tamper evidence seal that provides a revocable chain of custody for hemp samples taken from very specific locations within a lot, and goes from there directly to the lab. Terri developed this. So, Terri, can you tell where this comes from or what it is?
Terri wasn't.
I think
Oh, there you
she
go.
must
Terri,
have.
one mute.
Yeah, let me unmute Terri. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Where you at, Terri? There you are. Okay.
All right. Hello, everyone. My apologies in advance because we're both working from home, my husband and I. So, and this is a big studio, so it's you might hear a little bit of some other business. So we've developed what we're calling Seed to Insight, which is a very scalable cannabis and hemp tracking solution that can go all the way back from the seed genetics and can go all the way through to the end user. We put this little sort of short presentation together to give you an idea of the functionality and a little bit about what our technology looks like. The map we're looking at right now are the DEA certified hemp labs as of July. Now, as we know, in hemp, these rules have changed a lot. So in February of this year, this map had about 44 labs on it. At this point, it has about 63, and we won't. In most states, we won't be dealing with this year. But moving on, we will have to deal with DEA certified labs, which is an important reason to have a chain of custody solution.
So in Colorado, there's only 1 or 2 DEA approved labs?
Yeah,
Wow.
That's true. That's true. And this is the only map like it. I made it. I actually I've spoken to about 22 of these labs. And of the labs I've spoken to, it's important to note that some of them will not be testing hemp for compliance. They just got beat up by the USDA, took 5 phone calls and said, fine, put us on your list. But they don't have the equipment or the expertise to do it. So you can't really count on all of these labs being listed as ones who can test hemp. It's going to be very important next year.
Oh, that's a problem.
Also, let me ask, you have the Upper Peninsula is gray. Does that mean they have no labs up there?
In Michigan, they have a few. They have 3 or 4. And I left that very, ambiguous for these reasons, because some of these labs test water treatment, paternity, toxicology for pharmaceutical dosing, food. Those are your DEA certified labs that were already listed with the DEA. So the ones that are going to be testing hemp are far, far fewer than what is on this list. So, Richard, you want to take us one more?
Right. This was my idealistic view of what a hemp field looked like. And when we first started, I went online and did hemp field, and I pulled this up, and it turned out to be in California. And you can see that all the plants are lined up, they're all being watered. And we had a conversation with a lab in Lansing called ACT Labs. And he was explaining to us how they did samples. And he said the ideal thing to do would be have sections and walk around the field and take the samples in an orderly fashion. And if you found some hot plants, isolate those plants rather than condemning the whole field. So with that in mind, we started off to try and work something with this lab. And we found that to track a plant in a field with a commercially available GPS device was very difficult. There's a lot of GPS devices you can find on Amazon, and we bought every single one of them and tested them. And when we were testing them, it was in the winter of last year, and the test was very simple. I have a rectangular parking lot outside my building, which is basically 3/4 of an acre. And in the corner of each parking lot, I put a white cross of tape. And the test was walk onto each cross and record it, and then go back to the computer and see if the device put me on the white cross. We were looking to get within arm's length of the plant. We found that an iPhone, okay, if you got the correct chip in it, will get you within 20 foot. A Droid phone, if you set it to high sensitivity, will get you within 10 foot. And this device here, which is called a Bad Elf GPS Pro Plus, which you can buy on Amazon today for $255, gets us within 2 foot. So if you're planting your plants on a 4.5 foot center, we found in the fields that we're testing last year down in Illinois, we could mark a plant with a white piece of tape and then give the device to somebody else. And the next day they could go back and find the plant based only on the GPS device. So we know that we can get to within one plant with this device. And so that's when we started the program with the guys at Labs in Lansing. They're certified in 6 states right now. And so they had a contract for 30% of Illinois. And so we did 45 farms with them last harvest season 2019 in a period of 3 weeks. And we got all the, we got the bugs out of the system, I think, and you'll see in a minute what those bugs were. But this was a device that we ended up choosing above all others, and we recommended this to the other labs that we're involved with now. Here's how the system works. You walk, and this slide is wrong because the USDA, last year we were taking basically 3 to 4 inch samples. The USDA now says you need to have a 5-inch sample. So we've now got bags which are 3 wide by 7 long, so you can seal it up and put a 5-inch sample in the bag. And the idea is you go up to your selected plant, and I'll get back to that in a second how you do it. You go up to the selected plant, you pull your sample, you put it in the bag, you don't move from where you are, you put the tamper evidence seal around, and you see in a second the app, you get your waypoint on the GPS, and we've got a program that links the iPhone or the Droid directly with the GPS device, and you pull all that information. Then you put that in your bag, and you walk on to the next designated area, and you take another sample. When we're doing Illinois, the state of Illinois was only paying for 5 samples per field. And we've recently got their plan, which has been approved. It's now 11 samples per field, regardless of size. So if it's 1 acre, you take 11 samples. If it's 40 acres, you take 11 samples. And all the states are different, the ones that are approved. And what we found is the USDA says use paper bags. It doesn't work because if it's been a heavy dew that morning or somebody's had sprinklers on, the bags get wet and all your product gets commingled. So there's no point in doing the GPS. You might as well just get a whole bag of samples and commingle them. We believe this is the right way to go. And what you do is you sample it, and when you're walking around, there's a white window on the front in this area here, and you write on it with a ball pen or a magic marker. You know, this is sample number 6. And you put it in your backpack and go to the next one. This is what let me move this out of the way. This is what the app looks like. The front on screen has settings and Signakey. Settings takes you over here where you register. You have to log in because you have to get the app. Okay, and you tell it which GPS you want, and you'll see that in a second. You can have no GPS, the GPS on your phone, or the Bad Elf GPS. We always select the Bad Elf because it's the most accurate. So then you say, I'm doing Dave Crabill's farm, and it's test number 1. So you register your sample, and you hit submit, and now the Signakey key becomes live. Okay, there's the thing where you can change from no GPS, phone GPS, and bad elf, you just toggle that up and down like you would normally. And when you do a decode, this is what comes up on your screen. And you'll see in a second why this number matches. When I move on, you'll see how it matches, how it's captured the GPS coordinates. This is, in theory, how it works. You're taking the sample, you're using your phone to get your GPS coordinates, you're sealing the sample in the bag, and then you put all those sealed bags in a master bag, and you ship it to the lab. The lab then looks at the master bag, and the first question they ask themselves is the seal intact? If the seal is intact, they then read the Signakey again because they've got the program. So then they open the master bag and they lay all the bags out on the surface and check to see if all those seals are intact. And they scan every single one of them that seals are intact. So now you've gone right from the farmer in the field, from a specific plant, over to the lab. And when he does the test, you get the results. And because if you look at the USDA rules under the interim final rule, you don't share those results with the farmer, you share them with the farmer and the government at the same time. So the lab way set up, the certificate analysis comes up and the results are shared with the farm and the government at exactly the same time. This is what the master bag looks like, and there's a seal that goes on the top of it. This is a seal is 16 inches long by, this one is 2 inches tall, and there's the master bag. And you write on the front of the bag the name of the grower, the license number, the agent's name and signature, the name and the size of the lot of acreage, the date of sampling, the sampling agent's name and signature, number of samples taken, number of samples in the bag. One of the things we found out last year, which is it's almost prophetic, because USDA caught this. We believe the right way to go about doing this is to if you go to a lot or a field and you're going to sample it, the USDA says now you've got to identify the lot from the GPS coordinates. Last year at a farm in Illinois, we found out we got taken to the wrong field because the field that we were supposed to be sampling was hot. So we did samples in the wrong field. Okay, and now the way the process, we've written up a process and we've given it out to, I think, 12 states right now. First thing you do is you pull down the GPS map, see if that's a licensed area. You make sure that the person is licensed, and you walk the outside of the lot and confirm the 4 corners with your GPS device. Okay, when you do that, you say, okay, this is the right lot. And then because they'll tell you in advance how big the lot is, if it's in Illinois, you're going to take 11 samples. You tell the farmer or his agent, this is the field, this is my map, these are the 11 samples I'm going to take, and this is how I'm going to take them. And you can follow along, or you can stay where you are, but we're going to take 11 samples in Illinois, I'm going to put them in the bag, I'm going to put them in the master bag, and I'm going to seal it, and it's going to go to the lab. If you look back prior to the IFR, hemp was hemp if it's less than 0.3%, 5 samples per seal regardless of size. You mix the samples, commingle them, and then test. And if it's not hemp, you're supposed to burn the crop or destroy it. And now it's a little different. Hemp is hemp. The number of samples now is based on the field size. And if you look at the USDA, if it's a big field, there's a lot of samples. You keep all separate samples separate in a clean bag, okay, and you send them to the lab. This is what the lab's software looks like when he gets it. It's a Signakey set up. He has to make sure he's logged in, and he selects a camera, which wouldn't be the camera like on the I've got on my laptop. It'll be a remote camera, and you set the samples down. Okay, you start the camera, you point the camera, which you'll see in a second, at the Signakey, which is very easy to do, and you start the decode. You better log in first because it's a secure site. This is what you see. Here's the seal on a bag, and the idea is you've got to center this reticle over the seal, and you do it. It's not an automatic focus camera; it's a manual focus camera because you get more control then. You bring it down and focus it, try as much as possible to fill the reticle with the thing, and then you simply hit decode. When you hit the decode, the response time is less than a second. Okay, and in this case, it changes green and it tells you what the identity of the bag is here. So you read the identity of the actual seal. Okay, and I'm not. If I tick this box here, it would include geospatial coordinates. For this demonstration, I didn't do that. I'll show you in a second what it looks like. This box has been ticked. I will show you, we have a history. And the idea is that if, for example, this record here was in the field, it's got the geospatial coordinates of the field. And if the next record was the lab, I'm getting some interference on this. Next record was the lab, you get the coordinates there. And in both cases, you can click this and you get the map of where the thing was taken. Now, this is a specific example of one of the farms that we were working on in Illinois. This was the agent of ACT Labs. His name was Hunter, and he trudged around all 41 fields and took the samples. You'll see it got the GPS coordinates of it, okay? And if I click the button here, it will take you to the field. And you can see it doesn't look anything like the field in California. There's where he was taking the samples in the corner of the field. And we went back 3 days later and we found exactly the cutting on the plant where he'd taken the sample from. And that sample went straight to the lab. He drove it to the lab in Illinois. So, and that's how the system works.
Well, that's pretty intense, the way that grabs all that information and puts that on that bag. Puts that through the whole chain of handling it.
Yeah, we started with ACT Labs last year, and that was a pilot. And we printed all the labels for them, and we gave them to them. And we went alongside with them, and we developed the software. This year, they pay, and they.
We are working with labs. So anytime we need we're working on authenticated information. We're working with labs that are working with either sampling agents, or they can ship these labels out to the farmer on their themselves. In some states, the farmers are still going to be able to take their own samples. Regulators will be taking samples, and we are also presenting to the USDA and looking at talking to the state regulators as well, so that they can use this protocol, right? So we're getting true information. The farmer, we're not expecting the farmer to get desktop middleware for this solution. The farmer's use of this service or this solution should be available for him on an app. There's some fraud in the industry with some bad operators that are pointing their products, their QR codes at products that passing COAs, when in fact the products that are on the shelf are not ones that passed. We can eliminate all of that. Signakeys are also unambiguously unique. There are no two alike. So that in and of itself solves the problem of the black market. If you run into two Signakeys, you have counterfeits. If you run into one that won't decode, you have counterfeits. It is a very, very tough error correction. It's about 75%. Whereas if you destroy, some digits off a barcode, that barcode's not going to read. All right. But this, most importantly, I would have to point out that we have a scalable decode. It depends on what permissions are set as to what information will decode for you. That makes it so that, industry can protect their secrets and their grow room conditions and their seed genetics and any data they want to capture. Everybody, every stakeholder in the chain of custody will get a message relevant to them according to permissions set. I don't know if I went off on a weird tangent there.
I know, it's rather distracting.
By the porn on the Zoom call.
Wondering if
yes. What about pricing?
I'm sorry,
let me leap in here. I'm sorry.
Can I just share screens with you? I went outside to answer the door, and what was there is my new 7-inch bags.
Oh, nice. Right. There they are.
Yeah, so you get your 5-inch sample in the bag, and this is a new bag, which is called a whirly bag, and you put the sample in and spin it around, and these are waterproof and airtight. And when you get them as a seal on the top, they're also sterile, and the FDA approved of these bags. This is the latest addition to some of the stuff, because we had some bags leaking on us, and these don't leak now.
So I'm wondering, when USDA, after November 1st, starts taking over this, or the state has to have certified people go out and do this, I wonder if they're going to try to implement something like this, because, they're going to be going out to getting 5, 6, 7 different farm samples in a day probably, and have to send those in. So I wonder if they're going to go to something like this to track those.
Our guy who worked for AgLab, in his best day, he did 4 farms. But bear in mind, he was only taking 5 samples per farm.
For only 5 for farm,
Right.
yeah.
Right, because that's all the state of Illinois paid for last year. Now this year they have to pay for 11.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And one thing they're going to have to consider too is that if you've gone to, just like with the livestock industry, right? If you've gone to one farm, like a hog farm or something, you can't visit that other farm the other day because you're going to be taking mites and other diseases and stuff from one farm to the next and be spreading it. So
Yeah, same thing with hemp. Yeah, taking the pollen.
There are numerous benefits to regulators using this, and one is cost, obviously, but mostly we're removing the pain of all of the paperwork. If all of this information is digital, you know, it obviously is going to cut down on you know, the number of regulators they'll need, and also just the time it takes to you know, write it all down. Eliminates human error.
Speaking of cost, that's probably what's on everybody's mind is what does this process cost?
Okay, let me ask that question for you. The seals are all custom made with your logo on it for each lab. So we're only dealing with the lab. So we sell the seals to the lab. We don't know what the lab charges the farmer. I know what we charge the lab for the seal. The seal with like ACT Labs today, if they buy 1,000 seals, it's $4 a seal.
How many?
$4 per seal.
$4.
For how many? I thought there was a minimum.
For lots of 1,000. If you buy 5,000,
Okay.
it drops down to $350. The big seal, which is 16 inches long and 2 inches tall, is $7.50. Okay, per seal. We only do this basically 40 to 1. The number of the products, the small seal for the big seal is 40 to 1. Just to give you some idea of how you can tell it's been tampered, if you put that seal on within, when you pull the backing off, within 20 minutes, it cures up on the bag. If you try and pull it off, it leaves, I think the best way to describe it is a snotty residue on the bag that says void. So you can tell somebody's tampered with the seal. It leaves this horrible white residue over everything. And we made the mistake of giving some of the samples originally to the guy at ACT Labs. He put one on his desk. He said, look, I'll pull it straight off. And he left it for half an hour and he pulled it off and it just says void all over his desk. He had a hard time getting off with a razor blade. The stuff really sets up.
Yeah. But the consumables are bags and e-seals. So Signakey would license the smartphone apps to go out in the field and to do the sampling for farmers to use to access the data that they need. You know, the labs, processors, C Genetics, anybody who needs to add data into or originate, these Signakeys would require middleware for their operation, which for labs, we've created a piece of middleware and they can export it right directly into their LIMS system via CSV.
Yeah, yesterday we had a conversation with a lab, KCA, is that right, Terri?
Mm-hmm. Yep,
Kentucky. And they're in 2 states, can't remember the states.
They won bids for North Dakota and for Massachusetts.
Yeah, and what they said to us yesterday is they want to do a pilot with us. He said the problem is some of our growers don't even know what the internet is. He said they are the epitome of dumb farmers. I said, well, that's
he didn't call them dumb farmers, that's for sure.
Well, yeah, but he said they don't.
He said they don't have email.
He said that some of them are very sophisticated, and he said we'd pick 20 or 30 of those and do the sophisticated one first, and then see how it works with the less sophisticated. And so they're doing a program with us.
Richard, what if there's no internet access? No Wi-Fi at the field?
Well, we've not had that problem. We do have a problem in Illinois.
Well, they use a GPS, which would be satellites. Wouldn't
Yeah. Well, the GPS, but also, the app runs on the internet. We will have. There are some minimum requirements for the smartphone.
It can't be like stored and then resent.
I can be. Well, you can't capture those GPS coordinates. That's something that we can revisit though, and have that data, because the GPS is already integrated into the app. We can trap both of those, and then, you know, be able to reconcile them at a later date. But we do have that feature in the app as well for other applications.
Y'all mind if I ask a question? I know I'm a visitor, so.
Hi, sure.
Hi. So if you guys, let's say state of Illinois, if you're only testing 5 to, I guess now it's going to be 11 plants. And according,
yes.
So 11 plants moving forward. And
Yes.
you only, so you're testing 11 plants in different areas of your field, different lots, depending on the size of your field.
Yes.
And one comes back hot. You won't only be able to destroy that plant, you probably have to destroy the lot around it based on the IFR. So do you have to test every individual plant and only in an attempt to only destroy plants that are hot?
No, what we suggested to them was, you know, go a certain radius out from the plant that we found bad. And we'd say, you know, go like 20-foot radius. It depends what percentage you put in on your seeds, but go 20 foot out and pull a couple more samples at 90 degrees and see if you've got bad ones. I know you guys are all too young, you are especially, Marielle, but I've been out in the sun a lot and I got skin cancer. And I had this thing called Morse surgery, where they keep digging it out and take do the edges until it's all gone. I think the same principle applies if you've got a hot spot in the hemp field, move out a certain radius and go like compass points, you know, north, south, east, west, pull a sample and see if it's hot.
Yeah, the idea is to find these zones on the field, right? Hopefully, best case, early enough that they can be, you know, remediated. The farmer, you know, if they're testing prior to their compliance tests and they're able to somehow figure out why it is this zone of the field is hot and the others are coming up compliant, you know, then they can, you know, you can't address an issue you don't know where it is or what it is. And then you'll also have that data. You'll have this, you know, immutable data to take to your state ag department and say, this was my only, you know, area that was, you know, hot. I would like permission to harvest the compliant area and then burn the rest. I think that we're running right now with hemp legislation with the IFR. We're running off a lot of just, you know, silly, ambiguous rules and things that were all, you know, crowdsourced maybe from a group of legislators, and we don't really have the data that tells us what laws would be fair and just and compatible with the physiology of the plant. So, you know, we're trying to produce that. We have this data, then we can produce this data to legislators, to the USDA, and, you know, maybe get that 1% THC, you know, rating that we've been looking for, you know?
Yeah.
As it sits today, if you look at the labs that we've got agreements with, I think we cover like 16 states right now.
We were looking for like a cross-country sample, if you will, of what these plants are producing as far as THC and where. So if we have all this data, then we, you know, we'll have an argument.
Okay. Well, I'm going to introduce now Marielle Weintraub. She's a PhD, and she's the founding board member and the current president of the U.S. Hemp Authority. The U.S. Hemp Authority certification program is our industry's initiative to provide high standard best practices self-regulating, giving confidence to consumers and law enforcement that hemp products can be trusted. Marielle was introduced to the hemp and CBD in 2016, and she quickly brought the hemp industry need for valid and reliable testing and continues to drive development of hemp-specific testing and standards until she left Eurofins in 2019. Marielle is a board member of the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, a member of the American Herbal Products Association, Cannabis Committee, and a member of the United Natural Products Alliance, Hemp Extracts / CBD Committee. Marielle earned her MS and PhD in Behavioral Neuroscience from Texas Christian University in 2011 and 2014, respectively, focusing her research on Alzheimer's disease pathology. And Marielle, just a little personal note on that, we have my mom right now is going through a dementia phase of that, so I understand quite a bit about this Alzheimer's and dementia. So anyways, would love to have you bring us up to speed and let us know about what U.S. Hemp Authority is doing to bring this to the industry.
Absolutely, and thank you guys for allowing me to be here. And Richard and Terry, that was really interesting. So I'm glad I got to see that part of this discussion as well. I'm going to try to share my screen. If we get bombed, I will stop sharing my screen. I've never seen that before. You know you have
Yeah, it's
made
very
it.
different.
You know you made it when that happens.
That's
We will
right.
edit it out.
Yes, we
The
will.
final version.
I'll guarantee that.
I might need to switch my screens. Okay.
I can see it.
Okay. So what I did is I put together just an overview flyer about what the U.S. Hemp Authority is, because depending on who's listening and who's interested, the U.S. Hemp Authority started back, I believe we started putting the concept together back in 2016. We first started writing guidelines in 2017. And what was so interesting is it was a bunch of hemp competitors that came together to assure that the hemp industry didn't have a 60 minutes moment where someone made something in their bathtub, hurt someone else, and basically destroyed any chance the hemp industry had at achieving what we know, at achieving its potential. So the idea was to put together standards while we waited for FDA to roll out federal standards, because the state patchwork was really starting, and it's getting worse, was really starting to hurt a lot of us in the industry. We need a different label in one state, different labels in the other. No one knows what to test. And the concept here was to make hemp more trustworthy by consumers, more trusted by regulators, and just an overall transparency that you don't see in products in any other industry. You don't see C of A's popping up on dietary supplements. You don't see C of A's attached to food products. You do see them in the hemp industry. So we are a self-regulating organization. It's the same way USDA Organic started. Organic was a self-regulating organization prior to being adopted by USDA. And the idea here was we wrote standards that made sense for the industry. It was written by people in the industry and with public comment from stakeholders and consumers. We first rolled out 1.0 at the beginning of 2019. Immediately, we started to evolve alongside the industry as the industry evolved. And we rolled out 2.0 3 hours before the IFR came out. So immediately we began working on 3.0 in order to, anytime something gets put on paper, it then has to be redone. So we increased the size of our technical committee. We have 3 very specific sections of guidelines. For those of you who have never seen this, you can go to ushempauthority.org. Our guidelines are free to download, very accessible. Our technical committee who's on it, it is an application to be accepted and approved to be on it, but anyone who's on the technical committee has their name on the website. Our board has their names on the website, and we even put our technical committee minutes on the website as well. So we are trying to be as transparent as we are wanting the rest of the industry to be. What you'll see is we're split up into 3 sections. We're split up into farmer, grower, manufacturer, processor, and brand owner. So depending on which section of the industry you are in, you follow the guidelines and the regulations that are most applicable to your section. The concept here is that we did not want to reinvent a wheel. It was very much based on good manufacturing processes from the FDA for either dietary supplements or food. We are trying to evolve our farmer guidance so that it is closer to what we think hemp gap eventually will look like, so that we stay ahead of this curve. One example of staying ahead of the FDA curve, of the USDA curve in self-regulation is I happen to be on the working group for AOAC's CAST program. And AOAC was very specifically called out in the IFR for the approved method for testing hemp potency in hemp. So even before the IFR wanted every grower to follow AOAC regulations for testing, that was already set up in the U.S. Hemp Authority certification program. We do lay out very specific guidance on heavy metal testing, on pesticide testing, on residual solvent testing. For the farmers, we have guidance on soil nutrient profiles. Obviously, we have cannabinoid testing and other suggestions depending on your state, such as mycotoxin testing. And we pay very close attention to the different states, and we offer up options while reminding people that they do need to make sure that they stay in regulation with their own jurisdictions. We've had a lot of momentum in this program. We went from 13 originally certified companies in March. By the end of the year, we had over 60 companies, 30 of which were farms. And we now have a waiting list of something like 275 groups that have called in. I don't know who's on that list because we use a third-party independent auditor and auditing group. They're called Food Chain ID. They were the group that originally helped write the USD the non-GMO butterfly program, and are still auditors for that as well. They also audit for things like BRC and other GFSI, HACCP, and food safety programs. And I think my most proud moment this past year was when Prevention Magazine recognized us as one of the medical breakthroughs of 2019 in the top 10 list. That was probably the coolest moment I had, where we all of a sudden went from being hemp industry to starting to break into mainstream acceptance. So I thought that was pretty amazing. You'll also notice that when we evolved our guidance from 1.0 to 2.0, we made a very specific call out that we will not certify any hemp that is synthetic, bioengineered, or genetically engineered. We want everyone to know that CBD and other extracts from hemp come from hemp and from hemp only. The whole reason we're able to make these products is because of the 2018 Farm Bill, and that was built for farmers. In addition to that, we will certify groups who are not using hemp that is grown in the US. However, we do specify on all labels that you must be transparent with your consumer. So you have to list where your hemp was grown on your label. We're not saying one hemp is better than the other, but what we are saying is that you should give your consumer the right to choose based on what they believe is best for them. We don't allow any GMO hemp. I don't think that is a problem yet, but we don't want, at this point in the food supply, to include something that we don't have long-term information about. And from this, we are now looking to extend our program into fiber, into textiles, and bring awareness to the fact that we need FDA to start giving us some more regulation specifically for food, because we need food in order to create more demand for these products. So we have started, everyone who is a board member, including myself at the U.S. Hemp Authority, we do it for free. We're all volunteers. We are a nonprofit. All the money that comes in goes to the auditing and goes to, we have a set of lawyers as well. I think everyone in hemp now does, including the farmers. So unfortunately, the money goes to the auditing groups, and it goes to creating the program, marketing the program, but none of us are paid. And so we appreciate being able, I really appreciate being able to come on shows like this and discuss what we are trying to do, because what we are trying to do is for the benefit of the entire hemp industry and for our consumers. We saw that when FDA ran their, well, they didn't add a whole lot of data. They added a couple new points. But what I found interesting is one of the biggest call outs was that the label claim wasn't accurate. So for CBD saying it had 9% or 9 milligrams, maybe it had 6 milligrams. But what I was very proud to see is that when they looked at adulterants, so contaminants such as heavy metals, they saw levels that were not considered dangerous. And so I was very impressed to see that happen in a plant that is clearly a phytoremediator. And so that was exciting to see. And now what we're trying to do is fix the truth in labeling and make sure people recognize that on our in-person third-party audit, one of the things we're looking at are people's labels to make sure they're compliant and truthful, that they're testing. And then we're constantly running online surveillance, trying to find things that shouldn't be said, disease claims, anything the FDA is going to catch. What affects one hemp company affects all of the hemp companies. And what we'd rather do is find issues, let people know those are an issue, and hopefully give them enough time to change it before the FDA walks in. So our goal is to raise the hemp industry as a whole and provide assurance to people that the products that they are buying are quality approved or quality assured. So there is a third party looking at it. And so I think there's a lack of trust that is needed. And the Hemp Authority has started to gain a lot of momentum, and we're hoping that we are building that trust for people in this industry.
Is there a cost to join your group?
So you can't join the Hemp Authority in order to get, we're not a membership organization, but in order to get the U.S. Hemp Authority certification, you have to go through that third-party audit. Mm-hmm. And there is a cost for the audit. One day, 8-hour audit is $1,395. And then there is a cost to license the seal. It used to be more for the farmers, but when we saw the price per point for CBD drop, we also dropped what we were charging our farmers in order to license that seal for a year, and it's a yearly audit. So if you go on the website under the FAQs, it is depending on whether or not you're growing your plant for seed, for flower, for fiber, depending on the price of the licensing fee. And it also depends on the number of acres you have as well. But it ranges, I believe, from $100 to $500 for the year, I think, something like that. It did drop. I would have to double check because we are keeping a pulse on the market to understand. Our goal was never to go out and hurt farmers. That was never the goal. So as soon as we saw there was a price drop, we dropped ours as well. Sorry?
Good. I'm just going to say we have 5 minutes left.
Oh, sorry.
So,
well, I'm going to speak on here. I took the 1.0 class in Colorado a couple years ago, and it's very similar to any farmers out there that may be doing food safety audits. It's the same kind of thing. You know, you write a procedure, SOPs for doing certain procedures, and then somebody comes in and makes sure that you're doing those procedures and you're doing those procedures the way that you have written them in your handbook for a short synopsis of it. So we're working with U.S. Hemp Authority right now, iHemp is, to bring this training opportunity to Michigan. So we'll let you know as that proceeds, and as they're ready to start some classes, we'll let everybody know on that. So, and there's the class fee that they have, of course, and that's just a one-time fee. And then the yearly third-party certification part of it is another fee that goes on as well. So, but it's a good way for us to be able to have some kind of self-regulatory over the industry and over ourselves to make sure that, like I say, we're not having things made in the bathtub and things healthy. And I know that one of our members, when she first started, just a personal note, she was doing a lot of testing on her own because she was getting a burn under her tongue and she couldn't figure it out. Well, she found out through the testing process that all the ethanol wasn't being removed from the product. So those are the kind of things that we've got to make sure that that we don't have going on in the industry. So, yeah.
So, a quick question: if someone has just a brand and they're buying oil from other farmers, they can still go through this training and then use the seal?
So the brand owners can use the seal if they are able to pass the audit. What they're going to have to show our auditors, because what we're trying to do here is lock up the supply chain to make sure the supply chain is strong and audited properly, is that it's easier for them to make it through the certification if every link in their supply chain is Hemp Authority certified. So if you're using a Hemp Authority certified farmer manufacturer, it's easier for you as long as you still cover what you're in charge of from the brand owner side. If you are not using U.S. Hemp Authority certification certified farmers, it depends on what your supplier verification program looks like in-house, or you may have to pay for them to go out to that farm to allow you to use that farmer's hemp. Okay. So the concept here is to build up the farmers so that the groups that are brand owners are trying to certify or try to get their, making sure their hemp is coming from certified groups. So we're trying to shine a light on farmers where that makes it easier for the brand owners and the manufacturers to pass if the farmer has already passed.
Okay.
So under the USDA gap stuff, they have what they call group gaps that they can do. So a number of farmers can go in and be able to share that cost and get that certification. Is there any Is there any talk of that being done, or do you have that in place at this point?
Some of the talks we're having is finding a way to move the cost of the farmer's audit onto the manufacturer that's using them, or at least subsidize it through the manufacturer. And then we are also talking to various hemp gap groups or gap groups that are looking to add hemp where we can have some form of equivalency with that gap group. So we're looking at that as well.
Can I ask you a question, Marielle?
Sure.
I'm just kind of curious. I listened to last week's call, and Lori who's on the call, was talking about real estate on the bottle, like all the labeling requirements. Do you ever run into an issue with there's just not enough real estate on the container? Is that a specific size, or can you just shrink it down according to what the product is?
We have a lower limit size, but it is very, very, very small. And the one thing about the Hemp Authority's seal is we did not state that it had to be on the front of the bottle or next to the ingredients or anything like that. So we didn't, we're not forcing it to go on the right-hand side underneath the supplements panel where all the real estate is normally taken up. But we do have a brand guideline that you do have to abide by.
Thank you.
Now, this covers more than just CBD too, right?
Yes, so this is hemp extracts, hemp products, hemp seeds for eating, not certifying seed, different program. Topicals, pet products, not feed. So we'll do pet treats, but not anything that could be considered a single source nutrition. So no feed at this point until AFCO gives us the go ahead. But it does apply to any food, dietary supplement, or cosmetic product. And we are looking to extend that out to fiber and textiles as we grow.
Okay.
Excellent. All right.
Thank you guys for the time.
When will we have a class in Michigan?
So in theory, if we can do it, it's going to be January. What we're also trying to do is figure out if we can get an online class rolling so that we are able to, if we can't travel, offer it via the web.
So you guys will come play in Lansing if we can pull off the Midwest iHemp Expo?
You want to move your meeting out of January and into the summer months? That'd be cool.
Listen,
January in Michigan is the perfect time.
No, I was in the UP last January. Let's not do this again. Okay.
You just have to like the winter sports. That's all.
Yeah.
But we promise.
I'm a Texan.
We promise a perfect 72-degree indoor temperature and you can even walk from the hotel to it without having to get outside. So
Yeah.
And now we're talking.
and we're hoping right now. We're moving down that road. We are actively planning to have a face-to-face expo at this point in time. So
Toes crossed.
we're moving ahead with those movements. So that's what we're doing. Yeah. We need it. We want it. Everybody wants to get together and play. So we'll try to.
Yeah. So this is good. Thank you, Marielle. This is good information.
We want to thank everybody for being on today. This is a topic that's not going away.
Yeah.
There has to be and there needs to be confidence and trust in the product from the seed to the field, to the shelf. Mm-hmm. So we need to have that, and people need to be thinking about this as we move forward. So, all right. So I'm going to wrap up just a couple things. If there's any other chats, put them in there, or questions, put them in the chat. We'll get that on there for sure. But so there's a Midwestern hemp database project that's starting, and it's too lengthy for me to get into on here with the time we have, but we'll put it up on the website. But basically they're asking for Michigan farmers that would like to participate in this. And I'm going to put this, let me see if I can put the chat. There we go. Come on, chat. Here we go. All right. So this person, let me make sure I got that right in there. Yep. He's an Illinois Extension person, and he can answer some more questions if you have them, but we'll also put it up on the website we can go to. There's an application kind of to fill out for it. And basically, they're just going to be collecting a bunch of data from a bunch of growers that they're going to make public information, not your information specifically, but that's what they're doing on that. So if anybody's interested in participating on that, this would be a good source to have a lot of information and be able to share the information on varieties and how it grows and how you harvest it and a bunch of things. So So that's what we got going on there. So the last thing we're going to do is the Emperor.
My favorite part of the show, by the way, Blaine.
Yeah. This is there we go. We'll get that on there so it looks right. All right. So this is a balsamic Dijon hemp vinaigrette. It's a salad dressing. So pretty simple. I like simple things. So it's 4 tablespoons of hemp seed, 4 tablespoons of water, 2 tablespoons balsamic vinegar, 1 tablespoon Dijon mustard. And you can experiment with any mustard you like on there. I happen to have some Founder's mustard that I got the other day. It's pretty good. The Dirty Bastard's pretty good mustard. I'll say that much. Anyways, total flavored mustard, half a tablespoon of garlic powder, 1/4 tablespoon of ground ginger, 1/4 tablespoon maple syrup, and 1 teaspoon, of organic miso, mellow white or chickpea. And you put all those in a blender and mix them all up till it's creamy, and voila. Pour everything, it says on here, pour it over everything but your oatmeal. Again, we want to thank everybody for playing with us today on our iHemp Hour, and our great speakers and sharing that information. And I'm sure this will be a topic that'll be talked about as we move forward. So,
and all those recipes, we have getting quite a collection now. They're listed on the iHemp Hour. They're linked up on the iHemp Hour page on iHemp.
Well, we'll have to get them together for Christmas so we could have Blaine's hemp recipe book that
there we go. Yeah.
Hemp Association can sell at Christmas time.
We have one that's on there that now that we have fresh blueberries in now, there's a blueberry crumble that is just wonderful with hemp in it. So look back at that recipe. Maybe I'll just remake that next week for everybody. So.
Ooh.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks, Richard. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for hosting us.
Interesting technology. I'm looking forward to see how it goes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll edit out the Zoom bombing stuff. Interesting. Anyway, yeah, thanks for joining us today. We'll be back next week. Do we know who we're going to have next week, guys?
Next week, we're going to talk about testing. We're still getting the group together that's going to talk about that, but we're real close to that point. People are going to start having to test pretty soon. They want to know that for their THC. So yeah, we're going to talk about testing this week.
Sounds good.
All right. Make it a great week.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody.